And those diagnosed with ADHD, they're 30% behind normal. So she says, please understand this and don't put me in situations I'm not ready to handle. If you give me responsibilities that's beyond my developmental age, don't be angry with me that I do poorly. That's setting me up for failure, and that's just cruel.
Yeah. Hey, everybody, it's Dr. Jack.
And Mary.
And welcome back to the Forbidden Doctor podcast. This is podcast episode 156, Forbidden Understanding about your ADHD grandchild.
Yes.
For some of you, grandparents and parents, for that matter, who are not raised in an ADHD environment or family like I was not, and who think that an overactive child, as you see them, is just needing better discipline or even punishment to get their actions under control, well, then this podcast is for you.
But before we get to that, for our regular listeners, the next 4 minutes is our financial stuff. You can just fast forward through it if you choose, but for our new listeners, please listen at least once so you understand how we do things around here.
We want to take a few minutes to talk about why we do not have sponsors.
Yeah, we've been approached many times to sell different products on our show.
But we've always been compelled to resist these financially tempting offers because the work we're doing here is just too important to be beholden to some brand names who could object or even try to gain editorial control over some of the forbidden things that we say.
Yeah, so we would never allow this kind of advertising on our show.
And others have mentioned that while the knowledge we share cannot be found anywhere else, it is often tied to products such as the whole food supplements from the oldest nutritional company in America, Standard Process, which we often reference during our shows.
And this also would include our own ageless thyroid and long life energy enzymes.
Yeah, and so you might ask, could not our own products be creating conflicts of interest? I mean, have we mistakenly created an infomercial instead of free knowledge podcasts?
No. We do this on purpose.
Yes, we do. Years of experience in our clinics. And almost 500,000 downloads of our podcasts have taught us a few things. And the most important is that the type of nutrient-dense foods most of us need to get our bodies actually healing from years of malnutrition are not easily integrated in most of our lives.
Yeah, the quest for excellence in nutrition has never been an easy endeavor.
Yeah, no one wants to eat raw liver, but absolutely no one is going to sign up to eat raw liver daily for 6 months if that's what it's going to take.
Well, some people will. A patient of ours found she was told she had only a few months to live, and refusing that notion, she went home and threw some liver in a blender with a few spices and drank that every day for months.
Yes.
She lived very well for another 20 years.
Yeah, I met her more than 20 years ago when we were both doing a radio show at the same station.
But many people will not do that.
Well, no.
Yeah.
No, so let us be clear. We reference one-of-a-kind whole food supplements from the nutrition company Standard Process because this is a way to realistically nourish ourselves with the whole food and organ meats we would never eat on a daily basis.
And the reason we do our podcast this way is because it has saved our lives and countless others that we've worked with over the years.
So we sell supplements, and we try to give free knowledge away about how nutrition touches every aspect of our lives, and so necessarily these two overlap.
But we want to be very clear here. Some of you may feel real hardship with even a modest monthly donation and cannot afford even a single month's supply of supplements.
So please then, do not buy our supplements.
Or even try to financially support our show in any way if you cannot afford to. This free information will still be yours forever.
Yeah, of course.
And we want you to take it and use it with our blessing.
But if you like what we do at Forbidden Doctor, there are several ways you can still support us.
Yeah, you can leave a positive comments or reviews on our website underneath the podcasts or on iTunes or YouTube, or like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter or on Instagram. That type of support for us is free. It costs you nothing, and we would greatly appreciate it, and it would greatly help our mission.
Yeah. So if you're ready to take your first steps for your own health, take our free symptom survey and let our nutrition specialists develop a personalized protocol for you. and then try some of these one-of-a-kind whole food supplements for yourself.
Yeah, there's a link for this free survey on the very top red bar on every page of our website, forbiddendoctor.com.
Now, if you already support our show, thank you.
Yes.
And please know that you are the very reason we fight this good fight. Your support makes this all possible. So now, on with the things they don't want you to know.
Yes.
So what makes this real to us, this podcast, and, you know, they're all real, but this one particularly touches us, is because our grandson has been diagnosed with ADHD.
Yeah, and, you know, many times we used to think children with these behaviors were just lacking discipline, as we said at the top of this podcast, but there's much more to it than that.
Yeah, the more, you know, if all you ever see of an ADHD child is one at distance, at church, at school, neighborhood, whatever, in the grocery store, and you think, boy, you could teach that child a thing or two if you just had him for an afternoon. That's because you have no personal experience with these children.
You know, we have a lot of experience with this in the clinic, and we've had children come in that were way past ADHD, severely autistic.
Yes.
And, you know, those, you never see those kids in public. I mean, you just don't. They're not able to come into public. And, you know, we've had many parents, I mean, you can't get through an appointment with them, and they scream and cry. You can't touch them. They can't have clothing touch them. I mean, so many problems. We're not talking about that. Those people can kind of understand, because if they did ever see them in public, you know, it's very obvious.
Yeah.
There's something seriously wrong. But with ADHD, you know, kids, they tend to just be super hyper, and they don't mind very well, and they have this defiant disorder where they don't mind. They don't do what you tell them to do. And we're going to help you understand it more than anything. We want to get this forbidden information out there because we work a lot with the gut. And of course, this all comes under the gut umbrella. But some of these things, I'm not so sure you can change in this lifetime of the child. So it's something you need to understand, at least to some degree. And I think it will help you understand your grandchildren better. We found an article, well, actually our daughter found an article. It's called graceunderpressure.blog. So that's all one word. It's a website you can go to, graceunderpressure.blog. And she wrote an article, Sarah Forbes wrote this article called 17 Things Your ADHD Child Would Tell You If He Could. So
we're going to go through these 17 things as though an ADHD child was capable of telling you these things, and that you were capable of understanding this.
Yeah, they don't have the verbal skills or the, you always see these wonderful movies where these little kids spit out these beautiful, intelligent things. But in real life, no, kids just cry and get frustrated. And these are the things they would tell you if they could.
Starting with number one here, I'm trying way harder than you'll ever know, even though it doesn't seem like it to you. I really, truly am.
Okay, that's beautiful.
Criticizing me or getting angry at me that my brain doesn't work better doesn't help me. It makes me hate myself even more.
Yeah, we have seen a lot of self-loathing going on, and it's very, very sad. Number 3, I'm painfully aware of all the areas that I'm not measuring up. Instead of making a big deal about my shortcomings, try to find ways to help me. Number 4, an accommodation isn't the same as enabling. Now I'm going to read that again. An accommodation isn't the same as enabling. If you help me where I'm genuinely struggling, I'm going to be grateful. Don't assume that I'm manipulating you. Now, this is a huge one, because many people will say, you're not disciplining them well enough, and so you're enabling this type of behavior from this child. But what this mother that wrote this said, this is what a child would say: I'm genuinely struggling. I'll be grateful if you will help me, or if you'll accommodate and help me with the problem that I have. And don't assume that I'm manipulating you. Yeah. Other people may assume that. Yeah,
other people who are ignorant of the situation or these problems can't see through their own paradigm.
Well, this is a brain-gut connection, as we talk about endlessly with gaps. This is where the brain is not connected to the gut properly. Something happened in the developmental stage or in the mother or just the general flora that this child got at birth that does not enable the child to process neurotransmitters correctly. And so many times they have big gaps, no pun intended, but big gaps in what they can and can't do. And you just think they should be able to do everything. But many times they cannot control this. Yeah. They feel super bad. They have a lot of self-hate because they are not able to control the way they act many times, and they get focused in on something, and they do not have the calming neurotransmitters to bring them back out of it.
Yeah.
And so they're stuck just going down a path that they just kind of have to get rid of. It's like a real OCD patient where they've come in before and they have to line everything up. They have to shut the door 17 times. They have to wash their hands. And they feel better, but they have to follow that path down. Like they walk in and they'll line up all the pencils, and then you see them take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Now, this isn't something they want to do.
Suddenly the world has become safe.
Yeah, this is the way they are. And it's as if somebody was missing an arm, would you go, oh, geez, how come you can't pick that up?
Or if you see a little 1-year-old child learning to walk, and they keep falling down, would you say, get up, you dummy?
Yeah.
What's the matter with you, you lazy bum?
You don't do that. But see,
you don't do that stuff.
You'll see 8-year-olds that get in this emotional spiral that you can't.
And you can reason your way out of it, but they can't.
But they can't. And afterwards, they have a lot of self-hate. But let's keep going.
Yeah, and that brings up the personal aspect of this, because number 5 here, I'm not doing this to you. It's not something I'm doing on purpose.
Yeah, we take it personally.
This isn't a personal thing, but we want to take it right.
As if I'm not a good parent.
Oh, you're a bad child. You won't do what I tell you to do. Yeah. They're not doing this on purpose. Number 6, if you think it's hard to live with me, imagine trying to live inside a body that won't do what you want it to do.
Wow. That's what they would say to you.
Yeah.
You try that. Number 7, my brain doesn't work right, but I don't know how to tell you that. It makes me angry and unkind, but I'm not trying to be that way. So beautiful. So number 8, when I'm being horrible, what I really need for you is to tell me you'll love me no matter what, and maybe hug me too. I probably believe that I'm unlovable, so prove me wrong.
Yeah, that's good. I know that my lack of motivation is frustrating, but pushing harder doesn't help me to do better.
Yeah.
My anger and frustration is a result of my brain
and the gut
not processing properly. When I'm overwhelmed and freaking out, don't escalate by freaking out or getting angry too. I need you to be calm and show me that everything's going to be fine even when I feel like it's not.
Oh, that's beautiful. Be the adult. Be the adult in this situation and be calm. Number 11, if I get overwhelmed, don't expect me to sort out the problem all by myself. The part of my brain that controls regulation doesn't work properly, and that's why I need your help to regulate. So you need to be very understanding with that. Number 12, don't try to break me of things that you see as weaknesses. My sensitivity as a child means I'll be compassionate as an adult. My stubbornness as a child means I'll be independent and assertive as an adult. Instead of squashing these characteristics, channel them towards something good that can benefit me when I'm older. Don't view me as something that needs fixed or toughened up.
No.
Yeah.
Number 13, don't be afraid of labeling me. A label gives me answers and help. If my condition is serious enough to need to be diagnosed, you can guarantee that I've noticed something's wrong and I'm wondering why I'm different too. Unless you tell me what's going on, I'm likely to grow up angry and confused about why everyone has it all together and I don't. A label means I can get help. It gives me answers and vindication.
This one really broke me open because, we're always saying, oh, don't label yourself with diabetes because you can change that and you can heal and restore and all those types of things. This is a much more complicated thing, and it's very difficult to sort out the brain-gut connection. Now, you can do tremendous amount of changes with gaps and gut, changes and diet changes, but I really like this one where she said, don't be afraid of labeling me. A label gives me answers and help.
Yeah.
I think that was one of my favorite ones.
The next one here, 14. I have a real, actual medical condition in my brain. It's just as real as if I had type 1 diabetes. And just like diabetes, I need help to deal with the condition. No one tells someone with type 1 diabetes that they're lazy or if they're tired because their blood sugar's low. They understand it's part of the condition. So please, please, please learn about my condition and don't blame me for things that are out of my control. Just like leaving type 1 diabetes untreated results in serious complications, maybe even death, untreated ADHD can lead to serious complications, potentially including death.
Yeah.
So thankfully, there are many ways to treat ADHD, and medication isn't the only way.
No, but one thing that really helped me to understand this more is that sometimes medication is the way.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Yes.
if your child is severely ADHD, they can't learn. They can't calm down their brain enough to learn, and kids around them can't learn, and then they can become violent and all kinds of different things. So I think in a combination of a really good diet, or as good as you can get, because it's so difficult to get a super perfect diet with a child. And we've talked about this many times about how they need fat and protein, no sugar, no carbs. They don't even need vegetables in most cases. They need to feed their brain. They need to get their gut healthy again. But even still, doing all that, what your mother's flora embeds in the walls of a baby, it never leaves. And I'm still somewhat of the idea that these things can be changed, but there are some severe kids that I don't know that can be changed.
Yeah.
And so sometimes the medication can be life-saving as far as getting the quality of life is sometimes, many times more important than even, the quantity. Who wants to live long if they don't live well? So these children are suffering, and sometimes medication along with a good diet can calm them down enough that they can live in a family without being violent, go to school without being violent and miserable and depressed and thinking there's something wrong with them, and they can learn. So sometimes I think it is very important that they are medicated. So that's number 14. It's a real, actual medical condition in my brain, but I think it stems from the gut. But sometimes you can't go back and fix things. So just understand that you would have empathy for somebody with diabetes or that had an arm missing or some other visible condition.
Yes. But
this isn't visible. These kids look normal. They just are off the wall, crazy. And when they start getting, they're not crazy, but they're sometimes uncontrollable. And when they start getting that way, then sometimes that chemical cascade just has to go wash through them, and you just wait. And our daughter has a letter that we're going to read that's beautiful that tells how you can do that with your grandkids or your kids.
Number 15.
Number 15, my frontal lobe is developing 30% behind normal.
Now, your frontal lobe is where you kind of live. The prefrontal cortex is in front of the frontal lobe. But the frontal lobe is kind of ground central for processing information from all the other lobes.
Sensory, yeah.
Yeah, and so it has to be up to par to handle the flood of information coming through the brain. And even though there is some ADHD stuff going on here, there's very, very many parts of the brain that are functioning exactly the way they're supposed to. It's that prefrontal cortical area of the frontal cortex that is having a hard time processing information.
And those diagnosed with ADHD, they're 30% behind normal. So she says, please understand this and don't put me in situations I'm not ready to handle. If you give me responsibilities that's beyond my developmental age, don't be angry with me that I do poorly. That's setting me up for failure, and that's just cruel.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't ask, a 2-year-old to ride a 2-wheel bike. You just wouldn't. That would be cruel, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Here, get on this. You're going to fail. We know you're going to fail. It's beyond your developmental age or stage, or age, actually. But we're going to make you do it anyway. And then we're going to say, what's wrong with you? What's the matter with you?
A real kid could do this.
Yeah. A real kid would be calm in this situation. A real kid would be told they can't do that and wouldn't melt down.
Yep.
You know, I mean, a kid, what is wrong? Why do you have a meltdown when you don't get what you want? And we all the time don't get what we want. But look at us. We don't melt down. Well, these kids can't do that. You ever tried to take a toy away from a 1-year-old or even a 2-year-old? They melt down. But eventually they grow out of that. But here you've got maybe an 8 or a 9-year-old, and you don't give them something or take something away that they're focusing on, that they're zeroing in on, and they have meltdowns. And you think, they shouldn't do that. Or it's your grandchild and you think, he shouldn't do that. I didn't do that. You didn't do that. You know, speaking to your son or daughter, what's wrong with your child? Well, they're 30% behind normal if they've been diagnosed with this ADHD. Yeah. So it's important to understand that. And then number 16, do you want to read that one?
Stop expecting me to be normal. I can't be. Not for all my trying. Until you accept that, I'm always going to be a failure in your eyes, and I'll always view myself as not good enough.
Wow.
And then the last one, you have the power to make me miserable by how you treat me. Remember to treat me with love and grace. Treat me how you would want to be treated if you were struggling with a problem in your brain. I may make myself miserable sometimes, but don't add to that by treating me poorly. When in doubt, be kind. Believe me, I need your kindness.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
So
this is what they would say to us if they could.
Yeah, this is 17 things your ADHD child would tell you, or your ADHD grandchild would tell you if he could. So I hope that will help you understand your grandchildren better. Now, what I'd like to do now is read a letter that our daughter gave to the school that our grandson is going to, because he has had an extremely hard time in most of the daycares and schools, and they got him in this incredible school, the Waldorf school.
Yes.
And
which some of you may be familiar with as real innovative when it comes to teaching what's important in life.
Yeah, and he's only got 5 people in his class, and that's including him, our little grandson. And so he's got a lot of care, but he still is struggling, and there's still problems where if he gets focusing on something and then he can't finish a task, there's big problems. And for instance, one day he was coming home on the bus, and this was a couple of years ago actually, and one of the kids did something, I can't remember what it was. Anyway, he started freaking out. And what does a bus driver do? But, I mean, he pulled over, called the police or something. And by the time my daughter got there, you know, there was police cars around. And here's this little 6-year-old kid. And they're all scared of him because they're just like, they if you cage them, then it's really bad. Because they get focused on something and their brain does not have the ability to unfocus. It absolutely has to finish this. And then afterwards, they feel terrible. And so let me read to you. This was written by my daughter for caregivers, teachers, and therapists. And she quotes Carl Koenig. I don't know who he is. Do you know who he is? She says, to build healthy social relationships in an environment dedicated to personal and social renewal, healing, and caring for the land. In these activities, both independent and interdependence are fostered by recognizing the full potential of each student. So that's what my daughter was trying to do as she wrote this letter, to get them to realize what's going on with her son. And our grandson's name is Roman, and he's 8 years old. She writes, Roman is unique and brilliant, full of endless gifts. His sense of humor and play is paramount to his soul. It allows the things he can't control to wash over him, not affecting him quite as much. His resistance and obstinance can be legendary, like the city he was named after. However, his capacity to love is even greater. Roman has taught us more about compassion and love than anyone else. His nickname continues to be Angel Beast because he's an angel and then he can be a beast within the same, 20 minutes. And he's just the most loving thing. Okay, I'll go on here. Roman is full of great ideas, creative solutions, stellar negotiating skills, and questions, especially why, and funny quips. Lots of whys. As his mother, I see him easily being successful as the CEO of the next big tech company, the greatest comedy actor of all time, a very skillful lawyer, or a world-renowned engineer. Roman attended Camp Takota, a summer program specializing in ADHD and other autistic spectrum disorders, this last summer, and did very well. He was awarded the Social Network Award because he's so friendly, fun, inviting, and inclusive. Roman loves to network with people and make things happen. Roman has been diagnosed with ADHD combined type. ADHD is a developmental delay in the executive functions of the brain. ADHD affects the areas of the brain that deal with emotions, self-awareness, and self-regulation. He's also been diagnosed with anxiety and ODD. That's obstinate defiant disorder, right? Or is it obsessive? I think
it's obsessive
defiant disorder. Okay? What can happen?
Well, he can go limbic, which means the limbic part of his brain goes into fight, flight, freeze, follow. He acts out when he's feeling anxious.
Yeah. So he goes further with that than most.
In a moment's notice.
Yeah. We think Roman is a very powerful empath and sometimes can't process all the information he's receiving in complex environments. This can be overwhelming for him and cause him to develop anxiety and stress. Ask him. He will tell you. That is why consistency and stability with caregivers and schools is so important. Constraints and feeling like he has already lost the prize can be a catalyst for him lashing out. Hugs can calm him quickly. What he struggles with. Since he was 3 years old, Roman has been asked to leave daycares, classes, and schools for disruptive behavior such as noncompliance, physical aggression, violence, escaping, which is a safety risk, arguing, defiance with adults, and told, no, stop, don't, way too much. He can sometimes misbehave. However, his teachers and classmates love him and are sad to see him leave the facility because they are just not staffed for his enthusiasm.
Oh, that's a nice way to put it.
That's a nice way they put it. He really gets down on himself when he makes poor choices, verbalizing, I'm stupid or I'm dumb. He struggles with self-loathing, and one bad choice can spiral him into many, many more bad decisions. His parents and teachers wonder if he's unable to control himself or not in these circumstances. One thing is for sure, when he's spiraling, he can't control himself easily. He can be very single-minded in getting what he wants, but he doesn't want to hurt anyone when he acts out. He feels horrible. He also has a hard time controlling himself when he's in a state of physical or emotional hyper-arousal. So she's bulleted some of the things that happened to him. One is disappointment is the catalyst for his regression and his confrontation. So
you just hug him.
Yeah.
You just hug him.
Yeah.
You can't hug him enough. His issues with listening and following directions can cause him to struggle and be left out of certain activities.
Yeah.
His behavior and personality have continually isolated him and his family in many ways.
Yeah.
And this is reflected in his lack of self-worth.
Yes, and this, you have to be empathetic with people with severely autistic children because they are so isolated. Those children cannot get along with anybody.
They can't be out in public.
They can't even get along with adults, let alone children. So, Roman doesn't have this, but this is what a lot of ADHD have. They've still isolated him. It's hard for them to get babysitters. It's hard for them to keep him in schools. It's isolated his family. They can't take him many places. They can take him some places, but his dad, Richard, so many times picks him up, takes him out of the situation because people don't understand. Roman is he's just focusing in on something and he gets very, very animated about it, and he needs all the attention and everybody's attention right on him. This is the type of disorder, you could call it, or the type of, with the emotional aspect being 30% behind. It's all about him still.
Yeah.
He's like, a 4-year-old or something, or 3-year-old that, mommy, watch this, mommy, watch this, mommy. And it's just constant. And so it isolates him and his family away from other people. So this reflects in his lack of self-worth because he thinks people don't want to be around him, which, often is the case, but there's ways to be around him, which she gets into next.
He has the hardest time with transitioning from something he wants to do or into something he doesn't want to do. He wants what he wants and will occasionally throw a fit. He gets upset about not being able to do what he wants and says negative things like, I hate my life.
Yeah. He also can focus very well on some things if he's interested in it.
Oh, I've seen him sit still in front of a...
for hours.
With a... what's the little puzzle stuff that Legos?
The Legos, yeah.
With a complex
way above
Lego
his
set,
age.
years beyond his age.
Yeah.
And he'll sit there and step by step by step put it together, completely quiet, completely focused.
Yeah, and it's not that he's, he's got to find something he's interested in. He finds stuff he's interested in. It's called interest-based nervous system, as my daughters research this, because you think that these kids can't focus ever, but they can. He can focus very well on something if he's interested in it. So, and then he has a hard time, as you said, transitioning from something he wants to do or into something he doesn't want to do. It's a very hard time with that transition. So understand this. He wants what he wants and occasionally throws a fit. He gets upset about not being able to do what he wants and says negative things like, I hate my life or I hate me. And that's when it's really, really sad.
He's a tender love bug and loves to give hugs, yet sometimes he can be invasive in people's spaces.
Yes.
Especially getting too close to faces, almost mauling his objects of attention.
And we've noticed that too.
We've noticed that too.
Yeah, he loves hugs and loves to give them, but he can just get really...
right into your face.
Because he's like 30% not as advanced as other kids that are 8 years old. So she said he can be difficult to manage and control when he's anxious, and hugs can fix this. He tends to get obsessed with something he wants, and he can't let go. And he has a hard time going with the flow. That's why he has a hard time in school and a hard time following directions. So
how do you deal with Roman and prevent an episode? Well, he's comforted by play, humor, so staying calm is always paramount.
Yeah, so the adult
instead
stays
of you
calm.
exploding.
Yes.
He is comforted by touches, hugs. He responds well to them. The most important element of success when interacting with Roman is helping to foster his self-esteem.
Yeah. And so give him as much positive feedback as possible, play with him as much as possible, validate him as much as possible. Anything you can do to give compassionate feedback is beneficial, but be tough when it's needed. So start the day by asking what he's most excited about, and to get an understanding for what could possibly cause the most disturbances during the day. Roman tends to fixate on specific things, and finding out what that is can help caregivers modify approaches as needed to prevent these intense situations. That was a big paragraph.
Yes. So you start with a smaller loss of privilege versus a bigger one. For example, instead of removing him from a class when he's not listening, which will cause him anxiety and stress, just start with asking him to be silent until he can listen and let him know. If he can't be silent, then he will be removed.
So just start that calmly.
Yeah.
When he's acting out, physically get down on his level, bend down.
Eye to eye or below.
Mm-hmm. Stay positive and make sure he feels safe. This will go a long way with preventing escalation.
Yeah, validate how he feels and then start with a hug and be playful with him. Play and humor can always de-escalate situations quickly. And if he can't reform his behavior, when you're requiring it, explaining how his resistance will likely take away privileges. And be cautious about escalation because it can happen quickly. I mean, I've seen that.
Yeah, he's just fine, and then bam.
And then all of a sudden, start with taking away something smaller or something he's hyper-focused on.
No. Start with taking away something smaller versus
something he's hyper-focused on. When I was reading, I was thinking, that's not right.
Yeah.
Something he's hyper-focused on, or you could lose him at that point.
Yeah, that's when he escalates really quickly.
Yes.
In other words, if you walk up to him and he's, hyper-focused on something and you say, we have to go now, that's when he melts down. But if you can come up to him, start with a hug, say, hey, Roman, it looks like validate his behavior. Looks like you're really focused on this. This is so exciting what you're looking at, but we need to move towards this way. And then you move, and then you move, and then you move. And sometimes you have to pick him up like his dad does and takes him out, but do the best you can. She also says introduce sensory items like sand, swinging, jumping, and weighted blankets. Noise can help distract him back into his body as well. In other words, he gets so hyper-focused, it's like he's not even in his body anymore, and he can't control his body to some extent, obviously. And so she says if you hug, get some energy out of him jumping, weighted blankets. I'm not sure if she does that. I haven't seen that at her home, but it must be something that she knows about. And then noise can help distract him back into his body as well.
That's why playing music can be helpful.
Yeah, music is really helpful.
Or turning your attention away so that he doesn't have an audience can be very powerful in turning him around. Because some of this behavior is looking for feedback, and if you turn away from him, it can calm it down. You want to give him some time, come back to him, let him know in a very calm voice that if he can turn his attitude around, then we can go back again once more to having fun and learning.
Yeah. She says it's understandable to need or want to restrain him when he's having a very bad episode. Physical control approaches will escalate his resistance and cause more anxiety. So this is when she says something very profound. So when he's having a bad episode, physical control will escalate his resistance and cause much more anxiety. So she says, as an adult, that's the operative thing right there.
Yes, to be an adult in this situation.
As an adult, it is more important to be effective than to be right. Because I'm telling you, I've been in power struggles with him before, and you lose.
Oh, yeah. If you insist on being right, you've just lost.
Oh, and I've been there before. It's like, you are not going to do this.
Watch me.
Oh, watch me.
Yeah, watch me.
So it's much easier to distract than to get, it's more important to be effective than to be right.
That kind of thinking applies to couple relationships. It applies to things at work. It applies
ex-husbands.
to dealing with people in the neighborhood. It applies to other siblings or children who may or may not be exhibiting symptoms of ADHD. It's usually more effective or more important to be effective at what you're trying to do than it is to be right.
Yeah, that's the true power.
Aha, I've won. Yes, but they packed their bags and left.
You won over an 8-year-old.
Yes, you won over an 8-year-old. Yes,
or your husband left.
So some of the at-home practices they do, we're always working on mindfulness, positive mantras, and thinking.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about going with the flow and focusing on what makes us happy and peaceful and versus fixating on our disappointments. We assess Roman with, is that a tiny problem or a huge problem? And then categorize it on a larger scale to give him some perspective.
And then she says humans are loaded with mirror neurons. The function of these mirror neurons remind us as parents to do in action what we want Roman to do. For an example is start putting on your coat, and Roman will start putting on his coat. And you did some research on this.
Yeah, it's part of the way infants learn. Mm-hmm. You ever see little tiny kids when they start sticking they protrude their tongue out past their lips? It's because they saw somebody else do that. And then they'll start doing it. And if you look at even a 1-year-old infant in the face and start making faces, they'll start making faces.
And this is the neuron attachment to their gut. This is what Dr. McBride talks about.
And the mirror, and so some researchers claim that there's a link between this and neuron deficiency with the autism, because the EEG, electroencephalograph, where they put the leads all over the head, from different motor areas, the electrical signals are suppressed when someone watches another person move, because your attention is distracted to that, and so the normal operating level of your brain suddenly slows down a little bit while you're watching this, because your mirror neurons are picking it up. In a child with ADHD, that thing is suppressed in children a bit, and so when they watch another person move, a signal that may relate to the mirror neuron system, as I said there, the suppression was less in children with autism. And so it can actually be a training tool, because just because you put on your coat doesn't mean I'm going to. But if you're doing this in front of Roman and it's time to leave, and rather than when he's deeply focused on something, he sees you putting your coat on.
He would follow.
Without you having to say anything, but not just putting coat on, cleaning up something, putting something away.
Well, they're 30% behind, too.
Yeah.
So you have to understand they missed a lot of these things that they should have. This is how Dr. McBride explains it.
Yes.
They missed, this is the gap in their health, is they missed learning certain things at the right times because their gut flora was so damaged.
Yes.
Now, that can come from vaccinations, and that's another thing. We talked about this a lot in our vaccinations podcast, where you don't know what is being developed when that vaccination hits, when that mercury or aluminum, as it is most of the case now, hits the brain. You don't know what it damages and what happens. Now, they have not vaccinated Roman, but he could have gotten vaccinated from a former mother-in-law that she had. They're not sure. But the father had really, really, really bad gut flora. And Ambrosia is my first daughter, and my first child, I should say. So she got the detox of everything I had in me. And I was raised in a very medical family. So, diet was not much of a concern in our family, but we had lots of medications. I mean, I remember getting tetracycline because I got a couple zits on my face in high school. I mean, what did that do to my gut flora? And then I had Ambrosia at 18, just barely out of, well, no, I was still a teenager. What am I saying? And so she got that. She got detoxed on because she's my first child. And then she has her first child, which is a boy, which is always a little bit harder. Mother Nature doesn't protect boys as much. But then she had a husband at the time that had a very, very, not his fault, but had a very, very, very bad gut flora. And so just mating with him is kind of like a little perfect storm with Roman. And I we can't prove this, but if he had been fully vaccinated, I don't think he'd been verbal. I think.
Oh yeah.
I can read you many, many stories about this that's happened with little boys. And
we've had patients. We've
I just read one today.
Constant parade of patients in the clinic like this,
and especially little boys, because when they're held down, it's really hard. They call to them white blood cells because
the brain calls it, and the white blood cells have
aluminum,
nanoparticles of aluminum in it.
Yep,
that's picked up from the injection site, and it carries it straight to the brain.
Straight to the brain, especially in little boys. Little girls, not so much, but little boys, it does, because little girls will surrender to these shots, but little boys don't. They don't never surrender. So they don't. But that's what I'm saying. I think if he had been vaccinated, it would have been devastating. So we can't prove that, but that's what we feel.
So they practice a lot of empathy for each other and compassion for themselves. And she says, as we continue to learn as parents, our changes and new focuses will be continually communicated with his caregivers. Let's nurture and respect each other. Let's focus on solutions and be proactive versus reactive.
Yeah, it's so easy to be reactive around an ADHD child. Just do what I tell you to do. And they literally can't.
They literally can't.
They can't. No. And you need to understand that. And you need to respect that as much as if you asked a 1-year-old,
stop falling down when you walk.
Yeah.
You dummy.
Yeah. You have to understand this. So you've got to, it's got to be more important to be effective than to be right with these children.
And because of his ADHD, they try to keep him on a GAPS paleo diet to help his gut-brain connection. This means his diet is mostly protein and fat with some complex carb and fermented foods. And there's plenty of studies available through internet research of the keto diet, of the paleo diet, of high-fat diets, and what that does to enable the brain to recover a lot of lost time because of developmental upset at the early stages.
Well, Dr. McBride completely took her nonverbal autistic child at 3 years old, caught him really early, though, at 3 years old, and put him on this, no refined sugars, no grains, just fat and protein mostly, just meat mostly, and good bone broth and fats and fermented foods. And he completely recovered. There's no perceptible damage that she says she can see.
They also give him whole food supplements, probiotics, minerals, tuna oils, DHA and EPA, whole food multivitamins and immune support, bowel tonic, herbal laxative, And they have noticed that when he has an episode, it's usually correlated to constipation.
Yeah, those toxins just reabsorb and reabsorb and reabsorb. And what happens when he comes into our clinic and gets a chiropractic?
Oh, he goes home and has a dramatic bowel movement.
Remember when we babysat him that one time and you corrected him on your table in our bedroom, and he came out, and I have never seen such a huge bowel movement in my life. And these little kids with ADHD or any type of autism have damaged gut flora, so they do not have regular bowel movements and constipation. And actually, my daughter, his mother, had tremendous problems with constipation. So obviously, there was some bowel or some disruption in her flora, which she passed on to her son. But when he's corrected, now explain why, when he's corrected, that has a NUCA chiropractic correction, he can have a bowel movement.
Well, it affects the parasympathetic nerve structure at the base of the spine, at the very bottom, down in the lumbosacral area.
Say what?
Well, when I get the pressure off the nerves.
Okay, there you go.
Then the parasympathetic, the rest digest, the elimination aspect of our nervous system can function again.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it might be in a sympathetic override, the fight or flight. The last thing you have to do, the last thing you have to worry about when you're running for your life is a bowel movement. And all those processes shut down. But if, because of the spinal misalignment, you're constantly in a state of sympathetic overdrive, you're going to have a very hard time having regular bowel movements.
Well, I remember when Ambrosia would get under stress, and because I got divorced when she was young and many other things that happened with her, anytime she got under stress, she would hold her bowels. Many people do this. It's a sympathetic overload just kicks in, and she would be constipated to the point where I ended up taking her. Now, this is back when I was super medical, and I took her to a pediatric gastroenterologist, and he put her on just a laxative, that's it, and made me buy a watch, a little Timex watch, and we had to take her to the bathroom 5 times a day to have her at least try to have a bowel movement, or they were going to have to go in and operate literally to get this massively impacted fecal matter out of her. But she did pass it. But her son, our grandson, Roman, he has the same problem. But when he gets a correction, bam, and then his behavior clears up.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Isn't that brilliant? So let's recap this really quickly. ADHD children have a real, actual medical condition in their brain and their gut. Okay? Remember, it's just like as if they had type 1 diabetes. They need help to deal with a condition. No one tells anybody that has, a visible condition that they're lazy, or tired if their blood sugar is low. So that's something that really...
Yeah, and remember, you can't sit there and reason when they're having one of these episodes.
No.
Because their frontal lobe is about 30% behind normal for their age group.
So don't put them in situations that they can't handle.
Yeah. It's just simply, if you're sitting there, if you've got one 8-year-old and you explain to an 8-year-old you can't do this anymore because this will happen, is one thing. But if you're talking to an 8-year-old ADHD person, right, you're talking to a 4 or 5-year-old, not in the sense of emotional development, but in the sense of being able to figure out and follow what the heck you're talking about.
They just can't.
They can't follow what you're talking about, and then they know you're upset.
And then they melt down.
And they pick up that vibration, and they melt down.
Yeah, and then it just escalates.
And then don't forget diet. No processed sugars or flours. It's imperative to do GAPS at least twice a year.
Yeah, take 3 weeks out of the year.
Yeah.
Especially, after they've had a bunch of sugar, like at Halloween or Christmas or something, then, in January, do a 3-week bone broth, fermented foods, lots of, meat, eggs, fish, and dairy.
We've had a recent podcast, number 150, GAPS, Quick and Easy. We have many, at least half a dozen podcasts on GAPS. But the most recent one, number 150, and this is 157, so it's a couple months ago.
Yeah, it's not too long ago.
Quick and easy, a quick and easy way to approximate, in some cases, about the best you're ever going to do with GAPS.
Yeah, and I know you mothers are overwhelmed. You fathers are too. These children are very, very difficult to handle. They're not as difficult as some. There are many worse. But these are very hard, and they get such judgment because they do actually act really nice and loving most of the time. But they have these episodes that we just always think, if you would just discipline them better, what's the matter? You're a terrible parent, and we judge them wrongly. When if you can, and I know you're overwhelmed, and to do GAPS just seems like it's incredibly hard, but if you go listen to that podcast, 150, GAPS, Quick and Easy, I think it will help you to be able to do this with your son or daughter that has ADHD, and you can make tremendous changes.
And if you'd like more information, because we haven't got time in this podcast to go into every aspect of it, but you can fill out a free symptom survey for a child.
Yes, for the child.
You can do it yourself.
Write the symptoms down of the child.
Especially the mother. And you go through the whole thing and, this is definitely him. No, this is not. This is her. This is my daughter. No, this one isn't. And go through the whole thing, fill it out, and in the comments section, write in, I did this in place of my 9-year-old son who was diagnosed with ADHD, ODD, OCD, whatever else. He's taking these meds. These are his symptoms. Is there anything else that we could do to help him? And we'll give you an answer for free.
Yep, for free. And you can even have a free 30-minute phone consult if you would like. You don't have to, of course. But nobody else does this, Jack. I mean, nowhere.
Nobody does.
A free 30-minute phone consult with one of our nutritionists, and they can either explain what the protocol is that they recommended for your child,
and how it applies to ADD, ADHD,
or that you might need more care, and sign up and come in for a visit, or even if just the mother or just the parents come in and talk to us, we can do a lot with that. So. So many of you out there may be finding us for the first time. Keep in mind that the protocols on our website and what we're talking about are only available to logged in users. But you can create an account instantly by taking our free, no obligation symptom survey that we just talked about. You just go to forbiddendoctor.com. It's right on the first page. The little things scroll through, and one of them is symptom survey, and just click on that. So understand the survey saves you money in the long run because you're not taking supplements you don't need, and all of this at no charge to you.
Yes. So, and if you decide to go any further with the recommended supplements, you can get them at a 10% discount if you sign up for our text blasts. These text blasts give you fantastic coupons every single week. You just text the word healthy to 41411, and we will text you back a coupon code that you can use on our website, forbiddendoctor.com. when you check out.
And if you would like 20% off all the time, join our VIP membership. Just go to forbiddendoctor.com/VIP to listen to a short video on the benefits. And let's start your healing process today.
Now, you can call the office. You can always call the office, 801-523-1890. And they can help you answer any questions about the supplementation or the Forbidden Doctor's mission, or help you get into the symptom survey if you're having trouble doing that. But we're here to reveal the health secrets that they don't want you to know.
Oh, yeah. And everybody, please go to iTunes and rate our podcast.
Oh, yes, please.
Yeah. If you've liked anything you've learned so far, please go back to iTunes and rate it. We would so appreciate it. With your just this simple rating, we can spread this forbidden information far and wide because it will help us become more popular on iTunes, and that's the platform of the world right now. So if you guys have enjoyed this at all, please, or enjoyed any of them, please go to iTunes, give us some feedback, or just rate us. Just click one little star, 2 little stars. No,
5 stars.
Please click 5 stars. It would be much appreciated. And don't forget to tell your family and friends about our free symptom survey at forbiddendoctor.com. And it's free. Tell them it's free.
So the statements made in this podcast about specific products have not been evaluated by the United States Food and Drug Administration and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. All information provided or any information contained on or in any product label or packaging or this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for advice from your physician or other healthcare professional.
Thanks for listening to this forbidden information and our forbidden podcast.
So join us next time for another in-depth discussion of forbidden knowledge.
We'll see you then.
Yes, we will. We will see you then.
Thank you for listening to the Forbidden Doctor podcast. If you are curious about long life energy enzymes or ageless thyroid, you can purchase them without a membership from our website at forbiddendoctor.com Or get our enzyme formula from Amazon.com by searching the full term, Long Life Energy Enzymes. Don't forget to take our obligation-free symptom survey to get a free personalized supplement protocol recommended for you by Dr. Jack, Mary, or one of our qualified nutritionists. Take the survey, get a call from our nutritionist to create a protocol and a patient login, then use that login to see your own personal protocol along with any favorites you've saved from our symptom library. Remember, our website and our clinic are here for you always.